Hi everyone, welcome back to the drawing board. I've got a really nice little project to share with you today. I'm going to take you through the drawing of this little bumblebee step by step. I'm drawing him on hot press paper. I'm going to be using Bockingford hot press paper. This is 300 GSM. This is the A4 size pad, but you can use any size obviously. But this is hot press paper, Bockingford paper from St Cuthbert's Mill, and it's the hot press version. That's what I'm drawing on. I'm drawing with Faber-Castell Polychromos pencils. Apart from, I've got one white Pablo pencil there, and that's really because my white Polychromos pencils is quite small at the minute, so I've used a Pablo pencil instead, but you can use any white pencil. All the rest of the pencils are Polychromos, and you can use a white Polychromos as well. I've created a little outline for you, and you can get that for free over on the free tier of my Patreon channel. So you can go over there, you can download that to get you started with your drawing. And all I did was I took the outline, I put some graphite pencil on the back and then positioned it onto my my art paper and just traced over the top. I'm not using too many colours for this project. You can see here that I haven't got many colours. These are all the pencils that I used. So I'll put a list of these pencils over with the line drawing so you can see which pencils I'm actually using. And I'm going to put a list of these on the side of the screen so that you can see all the pencils that I've got there as well, to help you as we go through the project. The only other thing that I'm going to use for this project is an eraser. Now, a kneadable eraser is going to be really useful because you can shape it into all sorts of shapes for bringing out bits of texture. And I also use this for taking out the graphite line as well. But you can use any eraser. You could use your Tombow eraser, you could use any eraser that you've got. It really doesn't matter. But some sort of eraser for taking out of the lines, taking out the graphite lines. And if you do have a kneadable eraser, that will be quite useful for sort of dabbing in little bits of texture here and there. That's all I'm going to use for this project. So grab your line drawing, grab your pencils, and I'll take you through drawing this little bumblebee step by step. Really hope you enjoy. Let's get started. The first thing that I probably need to say about this drawing, you can see from the line drawing there is an awful lot of information on that line drawing. And the first thing that I think about whenever I look at a reference photograph of a bee is that there's a lot in there because there's a lot of veins in the wings. There are a lot of stripes and, you know, little bits and pieces, little shapes on the bee. And I think the best thing for us to do to start with, so that we don't get lost, is to just help to define around these wings a little bit, and then we won't get lost between what is a wing, what is a stripe. So my suggestion would be is to take a darkish pencil. I'm going to take my burnt umber because it's one of the browns that I'm going to be using in the line drawing, and just along the edge of this wing here, it's this bit here really, and it's this bit here, I'm just going to work over the edge of the wing just so that I know now, you can see the shape of the wing much better now. So I can see the edge of the wing there now, and it'll be easier for me to work out what is the wing, what's the back, you know, what's a stripe, etc. So that would be my suggestion if you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed with all of those lines that are on there. I think that might help. What we're going to do anyway is we're going to have a look at getting the stripes in first, so that that will also help us sort of work out what shapes what. Now this big shape here is a yellow stripe. You can see that on the reference photograph. And there's this line here, so it actually comes to the edge of the bee there. That is also a yellow stripe, this bit in here. So we're going to get some colour into that first. So again, it's really quite sort of obvious. It's always, I think, worthwhile, not just starting from the top and working down. It's always worthwhile sort of starting from the shapes that are really jumping out at you. Start with those first. That's the way that I approach a subject that's got quite a lot going on. Start with the shapes that are the big shapes, those what I call landmarks. They jump out at you, and it makes it easier to work your way around the rest of the drawing then. So I'm going to take my kneadable eraser. I'm going to start on this yellow stripe at the top, and I'm just going to shape this into a pencil. It doesn't have to be a kneadable eraser, any eraser will do. But I'm just going to dab it really gently onto the edge of that stripe there. So you can just about see it, and I'm going to go straight in and get some colour in there. I want to go in with the colour that I can see that's the lightest colour in that area. Because we're working on a hot press paper and we're working with colour pencils, we're going to work from light to dark. So we're going to look for the lightest colour. Now just around this side of the stripe and around this side of the stripe, you can see it's really quite sort of creamy coloured. So that's the colour that I'm going to use as my base layer, the cream. So I'm going to use ivory, and I'm going to put a nice sort of cream ivory base layer down across this stripe. Now I'm just going to use backwards and forwards colouring strokes, nothing complicated. I'm working the strokes out though towards the edge of the bee. There we go. So I've got a nice bit of cream ivory coloured pencil in that stripe, working out sort of away out towards the edge of the bee. I'm working light to dark, so the next colour that I can see is a yellow. I'm using cadmium yellow, but you can use any bright yellow that you've got, really doesn't matter. And I'm going to do the same again. So I'm going to work out, away, towards the edge of the bee. Little backwards and forward strokes. I'm going to take the pencil all the way to the edge. And then when I bring the darker colour in, the brown that's going to go over the top, I shall bring some sort of feathered marks in so that I can create that sort of lovely fluffy texture, almost like a fur texture, isn't it? But for this, at the minute, I can just keep the pencil on the paper and just run it backwards and forwards. I am going to want to take out the edge of that graphite there. Don't want that graphite in there, so let's just take that bit out. And then just work backwards and forwards, coming all the way down to the bottom of this stripe, and work that along there. There we go. Okay, so we've got some yellow in there. I'm going to go again slightly darker, and I can see in the reference photograph there is sort of like an orangey brown colour. So I'm going to use my burnt ochre from the Polychromos, and I'm going to, I can see that it's slightly sort of orange along the bottom and also on the top. So let's just work along the bottom first, bringing in some of this lovely burnt orange colour along the bottom, still working out towards the head of the bee. Really gentle. The pressure is not much more than the weight of the pencil. The weight of the pencil will actually work quite nicely. I'm keeping the pencil on the paper. I'm not lifting the pencil off because I'm just trying to get quite a soft sort of fuzzy effect with the pencil, but working out in the direction that this fur's going in on the bee's back. There we go. I'm also going to use a little bit on the top as well. Bring a little bit. It's not much more than a glaze really. You can see it's really, really gentle. The application of the pencil is really gentle. There we go. Bring a little bit of that orange in on both sides of that stripe. There we go. I want to be able to blend the top of this or create the fur effect on the top of this stripe. So to do that, it's going to be really useful if I put that dark bit right on the top of the head. So I'm going to take my kneadable eraser again, and I'm just going to dab across the top of that head. And then this time, even though I can see a little bit of the yellow coming through, I want to keep this brown quite sort of muted on the top of the head. So I'm going to use my warm grey 1 as a base layer rather than the bright ivory cream colour that we used before. So I'm going to use the warm grey 1, and just like before with the ivory, I'm going to work out towards the edge of the face. Little backwards and forwards pencil strokes, filling that space in. I can perhaps add a few little wispy bits right on the edge, because obviously it is quite a fluffy bee, so I can add a few little wispy bits. They're not going to be that obvious, but I've put a few in there. And then I'm going to use my burnt umber, which I used at the start, to put the edge of these wings in. Any sort of mid-tone brown that you've got, that will work fine. And this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my pencil in the warm grey area, and I'm going to pull it back into the orange yellow bit there, so that it creates, it makes it look like we've got a little bit of fluffy fur right on the edge. So I'm just going to pull it in, and I'm lifting the pencil off at the end of each pencil stroke, so that I get that lovely wispy feathered transition from one stripe in to the next. So let's just pull that down. Now, even though I might want to make this a little bit darker, I'm not pressing on any harder. If I want to make an area a bit more saturated or a bit more darker, I'll just go over it a few more times. So I'm starting off by dragging the pencil into the yellow area, the orange and yellow area. And then what I'm going to do is work, so I've sort of started in the middle of that stripe, and then I'm going to work out towards the top, work out towards the edge of the face. And I've just realised there's a little curve there for the suggestion. I think it's the suggestion of the eye, so I'm just going to put that in there. And I'm going to gently feather out towards the edge of that face. It's not very detailed, and we don't want it very detailed. We want it to look quite soft and fluffy. So there we go. I will just bring in a little bit of the yellow to just bring a bit of that yellow in at the top. So I'm going to take the yellow over the burnt umber. This is that cadmium yellow, just to blend a little bit. And then I'm going to use my dark sepia, which is my darkest brown that I've got before I go to black in the polychromos. And I'm going to, again, just darken down this side of the bee. So I'm starting in the middle of that stripe again, so that I can work out towards the edge as I work upwards, and then in towards the fur, the yellow fur that is, as I move down to the bottom of that stripe. Now I don't want to fill this whole area in, or I'm going to close up all those little bits of fur, those fluffy bits that I've put on the edge. So I want to leave some of that yellow and burnt ochre colour coming through. There we go. Now whilst I'm here, I'm just going to keep these antennae really, really simple. I'm going to take this dark sepia and I'm going to just feather it into the side of the head there, and I'm just going to do some little dashes, almost like in little stripes. I'm keeping this whole bee really, really simple. That will be sufficient. I will blend it a little bit, but that'll be pretty much all I need to do. Same on this side. So I can see from the reference photograph there are reflections from the flower, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to keep this really, really simple. I don't want this to get complicated at all. I'm just going to do some little dashes to represent almost like little stripes. that will do. I will just take the warm grey one and just blend over that. Just blend that together a little bit. Same on this side. Just blend all over that, all the way over that, and bring that together. That will do for the antenna because we're keeping it nice and simple. What I will do though is take the burnt ochre and just blend again the top part of this dark stripe, and also just add a tiny little curve there for the eye. And then what I'll do is I'll keep the burnt ochre, keep using the burnt ochre and bring it down and into that the yellow stripe. And that just helps with the fluffy transition between the dark and the light. Bring that in. There we go. I will just come back to my dark sepia again, and where it needs to go darker, just darken that down just a little bit. So you can see I'm building the colour up of the bee stripe by layering those colours. And you can put the lights over dark, you know, to a certain extent. You're not going to, I'm just going to move that, a bit of a crumb there. You're not going to be able to get, you know, really bright white over the top of a dark colour, but you can, you know, use those colours to blend a little bit. Bring your lighter colours into blend. This is the ivory, and I'm just going to blend this bit round here as well, just to soften that out. There we go. That'll probably do for that stripe for the minute. Might go back in and darken it in a little bit, but for the minute I'm going to leave that. I'm going to come back to this stripe, and I'm going to come back to my burnt ochre, and I'm going to just work on bringing a little bit more of the orange colour, the burnt orange, into this stripe. Here we go. So I'm just going to use directional strokes, bring that around, and I'm also just going to work the orange pencil through this top part of the stripe here and just break that up just a little bit. There we go. And then I just want to brighten it. I need to bring a little bit of the yellow back in. So I'm going to come back to my yellow colour. Whatever yellow colour you are using, it's absolutely fine. Doesn't matter, just like a nice bright yellow colour. And I'm going to bring a little bit of this yellow back through, just to make that nice and intense where it needs to be. And then what I want to do is I want to think about bringing it into this stripe. Before I do that though, right on the edge of this stripe, you can see we've got a little bit of brown as it's coming down into that darker bit. So I'm going to come back to my burnt umber, and I'm going to feather a little bit of this burnt umber, whatever brown you're using. I'm just going to work along the base, along the edge of that stripe, and just push that pencil out and into that yellow. Pushing those little, I'm going to call them fur strokes because it is like fur really, isn't it? Pushing those little fur strokes up towards the head. And just making sure they curve around the body, so they're always working towards the outer edge. And if I need to go back and just top up this as well, nothing to say we can't go back and top up an area that we've worked on. That area doesn't have to be finished until we put our pencils down at the end and we call it finished. There we go. So I've just taken a little bit of the brown around there, and I just want to blend that again. So I'm coming back to my burnt ochre and just really gently transitioning that burnt umber out towards the edge and into that yellow. And I always find when I'm using orange yellow colours, burnt umber, I find that's quite a good choice of the brown pencil. The walnut brown is a little bit more red, and I find this is a bit more sort of yellow orange colour, so it's quite a nice colour to use with this burnt ochre, this orange colour. There we go. So just gently bringing that pencil to just work through the fur a little bit. You can see I'm just breaking up the yellow a little bit. It's just adding a little bit of volume because we're adding slightly darker values into the yellow. I can come back to the burnt umber as well and top it up. You can work on it as much as you need to just add a little bit of volume into your fur. There we go. I'm going to leave that like that. I'm going to work around this little leg here whilst I think about it. So I'm coming back to my ivory pencil and we've got a lovely fluffy bit. Now you're probably not really going to see that on the camera. I'll probably try and make that darker for you so that you can see it. That's the fluffy bit right on the edge of his leg there. And I think, let me bring in the grey. I'm going to switch to the warm grey one because I hope then you can see it a little bit better than the ivory. This is, it's on the line drawing. This is that little leg that is just working along the side there. So I've sort of left the light colour on the edge of the stripe and then I've gone into the leg there. And I'm going to go straight in with the burnt umber because I'm not going to put too much in there and I want to keep it quite simple anyway. So let's just bring a little bit of burnt umber in to just represent that leg. And to be honest, I'm just going to put a couple of sweeps of the pencil because there's not much that I can get in there at all. I'll even use the burnt umber to bring a suggestion of, this is that lovely fur that he's got on his leg. It's a little bit dark, it's not so dark on the reference photograph, but if I make it the ivory colour, you're not really going to see it, so I'm just going to make it this colour. Make it any colour we want, can't we? If you want to keep yours a little bit truer to the reference photograph, it's a bit more of a warm grey ivory colour, but I'm going to use the burnt umber just to add a little bit of fluff on the side of his leg there. There we go. So that's that stripe done. Again, we might go back and we might just adjust it a little bit, but what I will do now is I'm going to come into this dark bit here I'm just going to work over the top of the wings. So the wings obviously start here. This bit that's on the line drawing here, I'm just going to work into that bit and around the side. So I'm going to use my warm grey 1 pencil and I'm going to bring in a bit of a base layer. Now we've got this around the side round here. So I'm going to work around that wing, down to the bottom of this circle bit, right on top of the bee's head. I'm not worried, you notice that I haven't taken out the graphite lines there, and I'm not worried about taking out the graphite lines there because this is going to go really, really dark. The graphite line's going to be covered over anyway. And secondly, I know that my pencils they're not very dusty, they don't put out a lot of graphite when I'm putting the line drawing down. So, you know, the graphite's not going to get mixed in with, you can see I've just taken the pencil over the graphite there, the graphite line, and it hasn't sort of really smudged. That's just because I know my pencils. You know, you're going to have to, if you are putting graphite on the back of your line drawing, you'll get to know whether your pencils put out a lot of dust or not. And if they do, you could just dab off any excess dust with your kneadable eraser. I'm going to bring my burnt umber back. I'm going to keep this to fairly simple colours. So I'm going to go in with my burnt umber and then my dark sepia to darken things down. And maybe bring in a little bit of black as well, but let's see where we go with that. The dark sepia might be okay. So let's go in with the burnt umber. Let's work along the edge of this stripe. So I'm remembering to work out again in the direction that the head's going in. So let's just work along the base here, backwards and forwards strokes, just colouring strokes, nothing difficult. I've got an even pressure when I put the colouring strokes down, these backwards and forward strokes. So I have got an even pressure there. Little sort of pencil lines every now and again, it doesn't matter, it actually adds to the effect of the fur, but you don't want too many pencil lines showing. You want to get quite an even coverage with that pencil. Let me just work around this bit of the wing around here. Let's work into this dark bit. So always sort of working in the direction that I can see that fur's going. I'm going to just feather out into the side of the yellow part around here, that yellow stripe. There we go. And I've deliberately left that because that's a little bit lighter in there. Let's have a look over this side as well. So I'm getting to the edge, so I'm using those feathered pencil strokes where I lift the pencil off at the end, feathering it out towards that leg that we've put in. And then this bit, as I work around the bottom, is actually feathering down into the next section. So I do want those feathered strokes. So you can hear me tapping the paper. I am lifting my pencil off the paper at the bottom down here. And I don't want to go too far past the edge. I'm just very gently letting the pencil fall over and into this little bit underneath, and then lifting the pencil off. And then let's just have a look. I don't want to make this too complicated. I'm just sort of working around these shapes that I can see on the top of the wing, and back to those colouring strokes again. And then we're just going to fill the space in. Now, even though it's quite a solid colour, we can't really see the direction. I'm still going to work the pencil in. We've got the direction here now, aren't we? So I'm still going to follow that direction. Working in the direction that this fur on the top of this bee's back is going to go. Now, I'm not looking for a really solid colour. You can see that there are quite a few values in there. There's a little bit of volume already starting to show, and that's because I'm letting some of that warm grey one underneath show through. So we're starting to get a little bit of the volume. I want to keep the pencil strokes quite small to represent the length of the fur. Don't need to press on hard. This is the lovely thing about this paper. It's, in my opinion, as far as good value papers go, it's a really, really good paper. It has enough texture to hold on to plenty of layers, but not so much texture that you're trying to fight it to get through all of that graininess and texture. It's a really lovely paper, and the texture that is there is really quite pretty as well. Sometimes you get papers that aren't that pretty with the texture, but this is a really pretty texture, pretty paper. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in just a little bit of cinnamon, just a little bit of pink through this space. So I'm going to bring a little bit of pink into this middle bit here, because obviously we don't want that bright white. And I'm going to bring a little bit of cinnamon just from the side, just to add a little bit more interest. I will just go in with my warm grey one. You see this little stripe under here, this other little bit. I'm just going to take my warm grey one base layer down to the edge of that. And that's because I'm going to be bringing some of this cinnamon over the bottom of this shape. So there we go. I've got a base layer to work it into, and then back to this cinnamon. And let's just bring the cinnamon over that warm grey one that I've just put in. So the reason that I've put the warm grey one down is because it's a grey colour. Obviously it's warm grey one, and it's just going to desaturate this a little bit. It's just going to sort of hold it back, make it a little bit more muted, so that I don't get quite a bright sort of cinnamon colour in there. It's going to keep it a little bit more desaturated, and that's going to be quite, you can see it's quite useful, it's quite muted. Just bring that around the side. I'm going to use my dark sepia and I'm going to do the same again. So I'm going to work along the top. Again, just letting the pencil feather into this yellow stripe. I don't want it to go too far. I'm just very gently letting the pencil sort of drift over the edge and into the yellow stripe that's there. And then remembering as I get to the side, I'm going to bring that around the side. And the other thing that I need to do actually, just on the side of this leg, is bring a little bit of a feathered texture on the side of that leg. Because of course we want this white fur, this creamy fur, to look like we've actually got fur on the side there. Can you see that? Hopefully you can see that. So I've kept it simple, but I have just brought a little bit of the feather texture in, and then let's come back to this bit in the middle. And anywhere that you see might need topping up. I always find that once I have my a pencil in my hand, I always go around to see if there's anywhere else that I can be using it. Anywhere that I may have already worked on that might just need to be topping up. So I just went and darkened that down. I could see it just needed to go a little bit darker. So I just went in and darkened it down a little bit. And then let's work around this stripe around here. Let's darken this bit down right on the edge of this wing. Now it doesn't matter if this wing pattern isn't spot on. I want to keep this nice and simple. It doesn't matter at all. So something that just looks like the wing around there, and then working around the wing pattern around here, darkening that down. That's going to go quite dark. Now I only want to bring this dark sepia. Do you remember that first line that we had before we put the warm grey and the cinnamon in? I only want to bring the dark sepia down to that line. I don't want to come into this cinnamon. So I'm feathering the pencil out because obviously it's not an abrupt edge, it's not a really crisp edge, it's just feathering into that cinnamon and warm grey one, working out around towards the edge. And you can see I'm letting some of the other colours come through underneath, and again that's helping with the volume because we're creating these little negative shapes that are the darker bits in between the fur. So like the shadows in between the little clumps of fur. And that's how we get the volume. So bringing it around. I also want to obviously feather into this little patch on the back. I'm just tapping that pencil on, building up this fur. There we go. Getting there. And remembering that I want the lovely feathered wispy bits right on the edge. Now we've got the top of the wing there, so I'm just going to put that in, and then I can sort of feather over and into that just a little bit darker around this middle bit. And I find when I'm working with these fur strokes, I find the faster you do them, the better they look because they're more random, because you're not thinking about where you're placing them. What we don't want is lots of parallel lines. You know, we don't want it to look like a sun, the rays of a sun coming out. We just want them to be some of them a little bit that way, some a bit that way, you know, completely random. And I find the faster that you do it, you just don't think about where you're actually positioning those lines, and it looks more random when I do it like that. So there we go. Now I've got quite a bit of the dark colour in there. I might just bring a little bit of black just towards the middle where it's really dark. So this is the black, and I'm going to just bring a little bit of black through. But I don't want the black everywhere. I want to still see quite a bit of that dark sepia and the other colours. And again, this just helps bring another level of darkness into, another value into the bee's back, and helps with a bit more volume. I don't want lots of crisp lines though. If you're getting lots of really individual crisp lines, try tipping your pencil over a little bit so that you get a slightly wider part of the pencil down on the paper. That will help you stop those really, really crisp lines. So I'm just bringing a little bit of black through. I don't need it everywhere. And I'm sort of just keeping the pencil on the paper just to darken down bits here and there. There we go. Curve that over. I don't think I need any black there, but as I've got it in my hand, I will just bring a little bit of black on that side there. There we go. That's fine, I think. But again, I've got the black in my hand, so I'll go back and I'll just see if I can use it anywhere else. I always go back and see if I need this colour in another place. There we go. And then just to soften this out a little bit, I'm going to take my warm grey one and just run it over the edge down here. Letting the warm grey one go into that dark colour and also over that little patch there, and just soften these out. I'm not pressing on hard. Just blend that out on the edge there as well. There we go. Let's bring these little legs in. So I'm going to use my warm grey one, and I'm pretty much just going to get a base layer down on all of this space around here to start with. I want to keep this really quite simple again. So I'm going to put a base layer down. I'm just going to use little circular strokes this time to get that base layer down. I'm leaving my graphite there, first of all, because you can see where I'm working, and secondly, that's going to go quite dark again. So what I am going to do though is just tap out, there was that light bit there, wasn't there, on the side, and I'm going to tap out some of the graphite and put in that base layer, and then just work down the side. I will just maybe tap out a little bit of the graphite there and just bring this base layer in. I just want that nice even coverage. There we go. There's those lovely hairs, those wispy bits right on the end. I'm going to bring in a little bit of the cinnamon because I can see a little bit of pink coming through. So I'm going to bring it just around this bit here. I'm just going to use circular strokes, and I'm going to bring a really light glaze. You can see it's a really light glaze there. Bring that bit in there, and also on the bottom down here. And if you've got any strong graphite lines, then do take them out. I'm just trying to leave mine in a little bit so you can see where I'm working. And I know that it's going to go quite dark down there. So the other thing I needed to do was to bring the cinnamon into that little patch that I've just lightened up around there. There we go. Again, working in the direction that the fur's going in. I'm going to come in with my raw, not my raw umber, my burnt umber first again, and get some of these shapes in before I go in with the dark sepia. So this is the burnt umber, and I'm going to, again, I'm keeping it simple, so I'm not making this complicated. I'm just going to bring a little suggestion of the leg. And I'm not going to go on to the flower with this tutorial because I want to keep this really quite simple. But of course you could go on and you could draw the lovely lavender around it afterwards if you wanted to. I'm going to just think about getting a little bit of definition in this leg here. So we've got a nice line across the top. I'm going to put that in. And then we've got almost like, if I just put another line there, we've got a light little bit right on the top of the leg. So I've just put another line in just to give myself a guide there. And then what I'm going to do is to start working out and along this leg, bringing it all the way up to the body and all the way up to that cinnamon bit that we've put in there. Let's keep a nice crisp edge as we work along the body. Coming back down that leg. And then as I get to the edge of the leg, I want to really feather the edge of this leg. So I'm using the burnt umber to do that. And I'm just adding a little bit of detail right on the edge of the leg there. But it's, you know, it's just simple. I'm just putting a bit of fur texture into the leg there. Let's work down along the edge down here. So still with the burnt umber. Way down to the back of this leg. And again, we've got these wispy bits right on the edge there, but we've got the bend in the leg. There we go. And then again, let's bring some of the burnt umber out and away from the wing. Just keeping it simple. There we go. So we've started to get the leg in. We've also got a dark bit just underneath there, and I've already put in a dark bit there. And again, it's just the suggestion of the leg. That's all I want to do. Keep it really simple. There we go. I'm just going to run that burnt umber over the top of that leg there. And we've got to go in with the dark sepia. So I'm going to go in with the dark sepia now and darken this down a little bit. Okay, so I've got my dark sepia and I've sharpened it because I want to get some nice sort of small spaces in here. So I'm going to just top up along the edge of this bit first, down towards this bit that had the cinnamon in, and then I'm just going to run the dark sepia along the side of that. And I think I'll just carry on working down the wing for the minute because I can see that this is all going to be quite dark. So I'm just going to run it down the wing. When I get to the top of this back leg, I'm going to start to curve the pencil strokes over a little bit, out and into that burnt umber. Just following the shape that I can see on the reference photograph. And then out and down towards the bottom of the leg. And my pencil's just broken and it's just made quite a mark there, but that's all right. Let's see if we can erase it a little bit. I might just bring that into the leg. It just broke and just made quite a mark there. Let's just bring this down and we'll disguise it. There we go. See, it's not the end of the world. We'll just disguise it a bit. Then I'll go back and I'll top it up. Let's just work on this line at the top. Let's just have a look. We've got to bring the dark sepia around the left-hand side of that little cinnamon patch. And again, down towards the bottom of the leg. We've got that lovely light bit, so I'm just going to put that guide back in. And then again, I'm going to use the dark sepia to create some lovely feathered bits out towards the bottom of the bee's leg. So it's just a suggestion, but it looks, you know, it's good enough. It looks like a bee's leg there. Not too much detail. We've just got the idea that it is a bee's leg. I'm just going to bring dark sepia around here and just feather that a little bit. I'm going to bring in the warm grey one and I'm just going to blend it again. So I'm going to really gently just use circular strokes to just soften that line that we left at the top there. And I'm just going to use circular strokes to just blend this together as well. And circular strokes are quite useful at blending because when you've put your pencil down quite lightly underneath, I'm just back to that dark sepia again and I'm just going to refine this. When you've put that pencil down lightly underneath, it means that your pencil's sitting on top of the surface of the paper. So when you use circular strokes to blend, it pushes that pencil around. You don't want to press on hard with the layer that you're blending, because if you do, you're just going to push the pencil straight down into the tooth of the paper and then it will get stuck and it won't move. But if you have put the layers on underneath lightly and you go over the top with nice light pressure, you move the pencil around on the surface of the paper, and that's when you can get some really nice blending. So I'm just using this dark sepia to just top up any darker colours that need to be topped up now, and that will do for the leg, for the suggestion of the leg. That's absolutely fine. There we go. Let's come into this dark bit in the middle here. So I'm going to come back to my warm grey one as a base there. I'm just going to pick up pencil crumbs. I can see there are a few pencil crumbs there, and I like to just dab the pencil crumbs as I go with the kneadable eraser because it helps me keep my work quite neat. There we go. So I'm using the warm grey one again, and I'm going to bring the warm grey one down, and we've got those guides on the line drawing, so hopefully we don't get confused as to where this dark stripe is, and it's just down here in the middle, and then we run into the yellow. So there's that one. I can let the warm grey one go up and into the area above just to soften it a little bit. One thing that I think I will do actually before I bring the warm grey, the dark colour in there, I'm just going to take my kneadable eraser and I'm just going to shape it into quite a point, and I'm just going to dab into and soften out that lovely patch on the top. I think that's better, isn't it? It's just softened. It had quite a harsh edge on it, so I've just softened that out, and the eraser's just pulled off little bits. Kneadable eraser is really good at pulling off lovely highlights with texture, because the eraser just sort of hits and misses the paper all of the time, and it can put some really random texture in that is quite hard to do, you know, with a pencil. It just gives you some lovely random texture. I'm going to work back in with a bit of the cinnamon actually again. I'm going to bring this cinnamon down the top of this stripe. So I'm working back in this dark bit, bringing that down on the top there. There we go. Still working sort of light to dark, so I'm always looking for what's the neck, well, starting with the lightest colour and then working down through the colours till I get to the really dark one. On the bottom down here, I'm going to bring in a little bit of my yellow. So this is right on the bottom of the stripe. Bring in a little bit of my yellow in there. And also I'm going to bring in a little bit of this burnt ochre. Right on the bottom there. And then I'm going to come in with the burnt umber again. I'm just going to come back to the burnt umber. I'm just keeping it quite simple. So I'm coming back in with the burnt umber, and I'm going to bring some of this colour into this space. Now I can see around here, and it was on the line drawing, I can see a lovely light bit around there. So let's keep that in, and let's keep that lighter bit in there, and then the rest of it I'm going to bring this dark colour down just like before, so I'm letting the warm grey colour underneath show through. And I've already lost that a little bit, that light bit, but again, I can just dab it out with a kneadable eraser, so it doesn't matter. Let's just bring this lovely fluffy back down towards the bottom of the wings. There we go. I'm going to come back with my dark sepia again, and I'm going to just go around the side of those wings again. Let's just redefine that. So let's just redefine this one as well. There we go. And then I'm going to bring the dark sepia off the back of this head and down into this back. I'm looking at the reference photograph and I'm just looking at the little bits of pattern and picking out bits of pattern. I want to keep this slightly lighter stripe just around the base of the head. So I'm just going to go back in and top this up a little bit. This bit can go a little bit darker, and then I'm going to work under this stripe. Do you remember this stripe that we put in with the warm grey and the cinnamon? I'm just sort of working under that. Bringing it down towards the base of these wings, and I can keep going back and I can keep topping up this bit on top of the head if I feel that it needs it. I don't have to say I've moved on and that's it, I can't go back. I can keep going back and adjusting it. And I'm obviously starting to look for the patterns in the wing as well. So this is why I'm starting to bring in the start of the wing. You can see the start of the wing there, making sure this is lovely and dark. I lost the little line there, didn't I? But that's okay, because I'm just going to take my kneadable eraser and I've shaped it into quite a long shape this time so that I can just pick out that little highlight there. And that's the lovely thing about the kneadable eraser. You can shape it, you can curve it, you know, you can do whatever you want with it. So it really is quite useful. I'm also going to take the kneadable eraser whilst I'm using it. I'm going to take the kneadable eraser, shape it back into a pencil and just tap into this line, this little space right on the bottom. And again, can you see how it's picking off pigment? It's taking off pigment, but in a really, really random way. It's really, really useful. It is something that I use probably I'm going to say all of my drawings, a kneadable eraser. It really is really useful. Just creates lovely bits of texture that would be quite hard to do. You know, to sort of work your pencil all around that. I'm going to bring in the yellow bit there and the black bit on the bottom. Now I want to make this wing, or these wings and the back of this bee really, really simple. I want to keep it really quite simple. I'm going to go in with my, my ivory pencil, and you can see the stripe there. So let's have a look. We've got this bit along here. So this is the ivory, and this bit along here is the yellow stripe. So I'm going to take that all the way. You can sort of see where it carries on round. So I'm taking that ivory stripe all the way around, just getting a nice even base layer there. There we go. I'm going to use a little bit of the yellow pencil that I've got. So this is the cadmium yellow, but any yellow that you've got. And I'm going to bring in a little bit of the yellow. Obviously it's quite bright and we want to tone that down a little bit. I'm going to bring in a little bit of this yellow, any yellow that you've got. I've used the cadmium yellow because chances are you're going to have this in your set. The other colour that is really nice, really useful colour is either Naples yellow or light yellow ochre from the polychromos, and that's already got the brown sort of mixed into it. But I've gone with this one because I'm sure that most of you are going to have this sort of yellow in your set, so that's the reason that I chose this one. So there we go, we've got a little bit of the yellow around there. I'm going to bring in the burnt ochre just like before, bring in a bit of this orange, and this is where we sort of tip it towards that light yellow ochre or the Naples. I think it's Naples, is it Naples yellow? Something like that anyway, whatever it's called. I know it's light yellow ochre, and I think it's Naples yellow. But anyway, you'll see it, you'll spot it. It's that sort of lovely, really earthy yellow colour. I use it quite a lot, but I thought I'd go with this one for this particular video because chances are you've all got that sort of bright yellow in your set. So I'm going to just bring a little glaze of this burnt ochre around here. I'm not making it complicated. I'm not trying to get all of this pattern in. I just want to get a glaze of the orange, the burnt orange, over that yellow. There we go. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring in the bottom one as well. So I'm going to come in with my warm grey one this time. Again, I'm just going to ignore the wing. I'm going to work over the wing and then we'll have a look at that afterwards. I am just going to take out that line a little bit because that's a bit strong. Let's go in with the warm grey one and let's have a look at getting this brown bit right on the bottom. So I'm getting a nice even layer again right on the bottom there. There we go. And then I'm going to bring in a little bit of the burnt ochre first before I go in with the burnt umber and the dark sepia on this one. So this is the burnt ochre, and again just a little glaze, working out in the direction that this bee's back's going, and it's just the weight of the pencil. You can see I've got the burnt ochre down, but I can still see that grey coming through underneath, and that's what I want. Then I'm going to use the burnt umber just like before, and I'm going to just feather. So I'm using pencil strokes that are feathering down and the pencil lifts off the end, and then feathering up, so working upwards and the pencil lifts off the end, just so that I can get this lovely feathered bit right on the bottom between these two stripes. And of course I'm curving it round because the back of the bee is curving round, so I'm just bringing that lovely feathered bit right on the bottom. And when you lift the pencil off the page, that's when you get the lovely tapered edge to the pencil stroke. So that's why sometimes I lift the pencil off going upwards and sometimes lift it off going downwards, so that we can get that tapered, feathered edge to it. I'm going to bring this all the way to the edge, and once I get to the edge, I'm just going to feather it out right on the edge of the bee, because of course we want to just suggest that fluffy bit right on the bottom there. I don't need to put it in strong, I'm just going to taper that off. I don't need to put it in strong. I'm also going to work around here. Now under the wing, it gets quite diffused, doesn't it? It gets quite fuzzy. I mean, there's not much definition there, but it gets even more sort of diffused under the wing. So I'm just bringing in, again, almost like a glaze of the pencil. And a really useful way to get that sort of fuzzy look, that out of focus diffused look, is my pencil starting to get flat on the edge of that side of it where I've got that little chisel tip, and just don't twist it, you know, so I'm starting to get a wider pencil. So here, if I wanted to keep some really fine lines come in, I sort of twist the pencil every now and again, and that sharpens it, and it means I pick up a slightly sharper part of the pencil. But here, because I want this quite soft and fuzzy, I don't twist the pencil. I keep that chisel tip in contact, the flatter side, that's what I mean by the chisel tip, the flatter side, and it'll just get bigger and bigger as I wear the pencil down a little bit. But what it means is it gives you some lovely larger pencil strokes, and that makes it look a little bit more out of focus. So that's quite useful. Let's just bring it down towards the bottom of the bee there. Not finished with it, but I've got the raw. I keep saying raw umber, don't I? It's burnt umber. Okay, let's just come back to the burnt ochre again now, and I want to just soften this transition between the brown and the yellow bit around here, and I'm also just going to work back over on the bottom. So you can see I'm leaving little lighter bits. That's just going to be a suggestion of the wing, so I'm just starting to think about that. I'm going to bring a glaze of this burnt ochre through, taking it up into the yellow. I'm keeping it really light. I'm keeping the pencil light so I can make any adjustments if I need to. Let's bring a little bit of the burnt ochre around the side of this wing around here. And just curve that around. I just want a nice bit of orange where the brown transitions into the yellow. Just to give it a bit more interest, give it a bit more volume, break up that quite bright yellow that we're using. It doesn't have to be exactly like the reference photograph. It really doesn't matter. We just want something that looks like a bee at the end of it. That will probably do for the minute. Let me just, I'm going to come in with the dark sepia in a minute, but before I do that, I'm just going to take the ivory again, and I just want to soften this out on the edge, just in case I forget that. So I'm just running the ivory over with little circles just to soften out that edge. I want to keep that a little bit lighter there. And then I'm back with the dark sepia again. And let's feather that dark colour from the brown and up and into the yellow. Let's bring it down this way as well. Not pressing on hard, just adding a glaze. Bringing it all the way down to the bottom of the bee, and just really gently just letting that feather out on the bottom just to create that fluffy texture. So I don't want the feathered bits to come too far away from the bottom of the bee, but just let that feather a little bit. And if I need to go back over it and darken it again, I'll go over it. That's how I make it more intense, more saturated. I'm not pressing on harder. I'm just going over it and concentrating that pencil there. There we go. I will just bring this bit down as well and just start to think about blending in this bit on the bottom. Bringing that pencil over, so I'm curving it around the back of the bee. Letting some of this dark sepia just drift up and into the yellow stripe and down from this one and into the yellow stripe, so that it helps to break up that fuzzy texture. And I'm just tidying this up a little bit. I used my kneadable eraser, didn't I? And it just needs tidying up a little bit now. Just needed darkening here and there. This needs to be darker around here as well, doesn't it? So let's darken this a little bit. Same again. But what I don't want is a really solid line of dark sepia. I want those other colours to show through. It's all quite diffused, quite softly focused. Can't really see much of anything. Again, I'm going to let the dark sepia just sort of work up and into that yellow. Just break up that yellow just a little bit and make it look like we've got some volume there. And you can keep working on this as much as you need to. I'm not going to do too much more to it because it's just, I want to keep it quite simple. I don't want it to get, you know, too complicated, too detailed. So I won't be doing too much more to it. I'm just going to get a little bit of the wing texture in, and we'll pretty much call it a day for this little project. Of course, you can go on and you can put some lovely flowers around it if you want to. There we go. I want to keep these wings as simple as possible. I'm going to use the grey, and I'm going to bring, this is the warm grey one, and I'm going to bring a layer of the base layer all the way over the outline of, or all the way around the wings inside the outline. Before I do that though, I'm going to take this colour, and where I've got dark bits in here, I'm going to go in and fill them in on the line drawing, but I'm going to fill them in with this colour, because if I went in and filled those in with black or dark sepia, and then I come to put all the other colours over the top, because you can see I've got to bring some cinnamons in, some lovely sort of browns, you know, some of the yellow colour in there. If I went over and did it with the dark sepia or the black, as I brought the other colours in, I've either got to stay away from that dark sepia and black, or I will smudge that. I'm definitely going to smudge that. But if I plot these in with this colour, I can bring all the other colours over the top, but it means I don't lose the line drawing. So when I come to go over it with the dark sepia or the black afterwards, or just the dark colour, you know, the burnt umber, they're there. I've got it there. So I'm going to go in and basically just sort of colour it in. Colour in these dark bits to get these dark shapes in. Now I'm just using the line drawing as a guide. I'm not trying to put everything in. But these are going to be the really dark bits in the final drawing. These are the bits that I'm going to go over with either the burnt umber or the dark sepia. Maybe the black. I'm not planning on really using the black too much, but you know, that sort of dark colour. That'll probably do. That's all I need to put in there. So you can see I've started to get the structure of the veins in there here as well, actually. Let's just bring that in. I'm going to do the same on this side. So it means that it's in, I can see where it is, but I'll easily be able to work the light colours over the top, and I'll be able to go over it at the end with the dark colour. So let's just go over this line drawing. Nice sharpish pencil. Working around there. I am going to work around the outside of this bit here, because there is quite a strong line on the outside. So I've taken the pencil off as far as I feel comfortable, the graphite pencil that is. And when I say as far as I feel comfortable, I just mean so that I can see it, so that I'm not losing it. And then I'm going back in with this warm grey one, and quite a strong line. You can see I'm putting quite a strong line down. I'm probably not going to put anything on the bottom of this here, because that is quite a soft sort of transition off the edge there. Let's have a look. We've got everything in this bit. Oh, there's just a bit there and a bit down there. I'm not trying to get the pattern exact. I'm just trying to get some pattern in. Oh, and I can also see there's a slightly darker line down there. So that's in. Now that's not going to move now. We don't need to worry about rubbing that out. That's going to be sort of in there. I can build the other colours over the top, and then I can go over it at the end and just top that up. I'm going to come back in with the warm grey one, and now I'm going to put in a really light, even coverage. Now obviously I'm putting warm grey one over the warm grey one that I've just put down for the outline. I'm going to make sure that I obviously don't make it so dark that I cover up all of that line drawing that I've just put down. I want a nice even coverage. And to get that, I tip my pencil over a little bit. Sometimes I can just use backwards and forwards, what I call colouring strokes. Sometimes circular strokes work, oval strokes. That might help you get a nice even coverage. If you're struggling with the backwards and forwards getting the even coverage, switch to those circular strokes, those oval strokes. And that just means you don't get a stop-start on the end of the pencil line. You get like a curve on the end of the pencil line, and it stops you getting those sort of lines build up on your paper. Let's bring this down here. There we go. And I find putting an even base layer down, can you see I've got that flat end on the end of the pencil again? That really helps to get that base layer down, to get the nice even base layer down. I'm going to bring in a little bit of cinnamon, and I'm just going to sort of work my way through the wings, picking through the wings, just looking for areas that could be a little bit more pink coloured, a bit more cinnamon. Now, if I feel that I'm losing this outline, I can go in and I can go back in with, let me just show you, I can go back with a warm grey one and I can top it up again. And if the warm grey one's not quite dark enough, I could go in with something like maybe the burnt umber and do it again. But by the time the warm grey one isn't dark enough, the rest of the area will be darker anyway, you know, so I could probably go in with a bit of the burnt umber then. Anyway, let's bring in a bit of this cinnamon. Now, I want the wing to be really quite translucent. So the pencil that I'm going to put down for the wing, I'm just going to build up with glazes. So you can see that I've got the pencil tipped over on its side. I'm bringing in a tiny bit of colour. There isn't much colour that's going to go into these wings because we do want them to look translucent. And this is the reason that we put the base layer down to start with, because the base layer has already, so this warm grey one that went down, it's already filled in a bit of the tooth of the paper. It's created a bit more of a sort of smoother surface to bring this cinnamon in. And the cinnamon then just glides over the surface a little bit better, because basically the warm grey one that's gone down as the base layer has already sort of taken up some of that tooth, created a bit more of a shiny surface. So you can see there how I've got the slightest little sort of glaze over the top of the wings. That's going to pretty much be enough to give me the translucent feel that I want to this wing. I'm just going to bring a little bit of the colour in around here. Now in the reference photograph, I can see a few sort of mauves, purples, particularly around here, come in, because obviously it's reflecting off the lavender that the bee's on, but I'm not going to bring that in. I just want to keep this quite simple. I don't want it to become complicated, so that we've got something that looks real at the end of it, but without too much detail. There we go. So I've just brought the cinnamon pencil around there, and you can see that it's really, really delicate. I'm going to bring in a bit of the burnt umber, and I'm going to pick out some of the shapes. So let's go to where we can see some of these shapes, and I'm going to bring a little bit in there. Now do pay attention to those veins, that line drawing. If you need to go back in and top it up, if you can't see the line drawing, just go back in and top it up. You can always go in and top it up. So for instance, I could go over it and top it up with the burnt ochre. I wouldn't go sort of straight to the dark sepia or straight to the burnt umber. I'd sort of go down the value. So I could top it up like that. You know, I've just done it with this one. I'm going to bring this around the edge anyway. I'm not going to put too much more into these wings. I just want to bring a little bit of volume into the wings. So I won't need to put too many more layers down before I will be able to refine those veins. I'm going to just switch to circular strokes on the bottom down here. You really can't see any detail or any direction. Let's just carry over a little bit of the burnt ochre up into this top bit up here. There we go. And then let's have a look around here. So we've got a lovely bit of colour, and I will just top that bit up there actually, or I'm going to lose that. So this is going to go quite dark brown. I should be using the burnt umber, but I'll top it up with the burnt ochre. You can always top up the edges of your shapes with something that is just dark enough that you can see, but that you can go in and adjust it afterwards. So let's just work around this bit around here. I'm just looking for anything that sort of looks orange, really. Bring in a little bit of burnt ochre in around places where I can just see that it needs topping up a bit. I'm just working around the segments, topping up the veins. Let's have a look at this one. We've got this bit. Let's just top that up with this burnt ochre. And we've got this bit that comes around here. It doesn't have to be exact. It really doesn't. I'm just getting some of the suggestion in. There we go. And then I will bring a bit of the burnt ochre on the bottom down here. But you can see I'm still building it up with glazes. This has got to look really quite translucent. Bringing that little bit in on the end. There we go. Can I see any more? Anywhere that you can just see needs to be topped up a little bit. A bit more of the burnt ochre. And it's nothing more than the weight of the pencil, really. I will just bring a little bit of the burnt ochre around here as well, into this bit here, and just let it drift down and into this yellow down here. I'm going to come back to the burnt umber, and I'm going to just follow around some of these veins now. So let's just follow this down. Let's just bring some of these veins back in. Don't want to press on hard. I'm just neatening up the edge a little bit. Let's have a look. We've got a little bit there. And there's, there are slightly darker bits where the veins meet, aren't there? So I'm just putting those in as well. Bringing that in, but bringing it in really soft and subtle. It's on the line drawing. Unfortunately, there aren't too many sort of sections of the wing with the veins for this particular bee. Let's just bring the dark bit around there. But it's only a suggestion, so we don't need to worry about getting it absolutely spot on. Once this reference photograph's been taken away, nobody's going to know exactly what the pattern was on this bee. Just got to look, it's got to look sort of right. Let's have a look on this side. So we're going to work down this little bit here, keeping that pressure really light with the pencil. Darkening this bit down right at the bottom. It's really good practice at building up glazes. And building colours up, in my opinion, with lots and lots of glazes can be really, really useful. Here we go. Let's have a look up here as well. Let's just darken this little bit down. I'm going to work in and darken some of these sections down. Now, I will be coming back in with the dark sepia, but I can see I'm losing them on this side. So I'm going to go in and find them again and just darken them down. And if you've lost some of them, it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Just get something in there. It's the wrong colour, obviously. I've got to go in and darken it with the dark sepia. But it means using, sort of darkening down one stage at a time, these darker bits, it means that I can just sort of keep control of the colour a little bit. I can just make sure that I can blend, and I'm not going to just push dark sepia around over it, or even worse, like black. You know, I wouldn't want to go in and do this with black. I'm just building it up slowly. And then I can go back and top it up. We don't have to go straight from, you know, A to Z. Just because something looks really dark, we don't have to go straight in with a dark colour. We can build it up slowly. And I'm just adding a little bit of interest into the wing as well. I'm keeping, you know, I haven't used that many colours. I'm keeping it quite simple. So I'm not bringing in, I can see like around there, a bit of a purpley grey, a little bit of a purple grey. I'm just not bringing that in. I'm keeping it nice and simple. But of course you can do that if you want to, if you've got those colour pencils. I figured the less pencils I use, the more likely it's going to be that you're going to be able to find something different, because of course we're all working with different brands of pencils, but the pencils that I've used today are, you know, you're going to find something like that in just about any brand and any set of pencils, any brand of pencils. So I'm just going back whilst I've got this burnt umber in my hand, and I'm just going to really soften. So I'm using circular strokes now because I just want to soften that a little bit more. Just soften those pencil strokes out underneath. Just take that along that edge there and soften that. There we go. Now on this side, I can bring in the dark sepia. I don't really need to bring any sort of dark colour in on this side, but obviously this side does need to go darker. So let's just have a look. This is back to the dark sepia. And let's just have a look. Before I do that, I can see I haven't got any colour in that bit up there. So I'm just going to take my cinnamon and put a glaze of the cinnamon right over the top. I didn't have any colour in the top of that bit there. You may have done, but I didn't. So I'm just going to bring the cinnamon in there. There we go. Then I'm going to come back to my dark sepia and just darken and also pick up little bits of pattern that I can see. I'm not trying to make it really complicated. So, it's just a little tap here and there just to soften things out. Let's start to darken bits down as well. So that bit obviously needs to go darker. Let's just darken down at the side of this wing here. Anything that you feel just needs topping up now. Now's the chance to refine anything whilst we're darkening down. And maybe, you know, you might need to adjust a shape. I can see an odd shape here and there that I can adjust. The idea isn't to make it really detailed. It's just to darken bits down, put a little bit more volume. You can see, you know, the wing had to be darker there because it's going over the dark stripe. So I'm just darkening down this little bit over this dark wing, or this dark part of the body, sorry, not the dark wing, over the dark part of the body. Let's just darken around this bit as well. Soften that edge because I had quite a strong edge on that there. So this paper that I'm using, this Bockingford hot press paper, it's, in my opinion, it's a really good value paper. It has just enough texture to pick up, or just enough grain to pick up all the layers that I want to put down, but, you know, not too much texture that I'm still trying to fight through the texture. I'm coming to the end now and I don't really have any texture left. I've got grain to be able to put down a lot more layers, but what I mean is I don't have any visible texture. So the texture that was there has been smoothed out quite nicely, and, you know, it's left me with quite a nice drawing. Depending on what paper you're using, you might still have a little bit of texture left, or you may have, you know, no texture left. You might be like this. If you find that you still have got texture left and you're still seeing texture, just carry on building up your layers a little bit more, and you will eventually, you know, get through that texture. Okay, right, I'm pretty much there with it. I've got a nice dark bit on this side. I'm just going to darken down around the bottom, around here. That's quite light on the bottom there. I can't really see anywhere that I can, or I would need the dark sepia. Maybe just a little bit where these veins sort of meet. So I'm just going to add a little bit of the dark sepia here and there. It's pretty much on like the junctions of the veins. I'm sure that's got an actual name. If you know, then let me know. It's what these little junctions of the veins are called. I don't know, but hopefully you understand where I mean. I'm just softening out the edge of that fluffy bit there. And just refining it. I mean, I'm pretty much there with it. One thing that I will do is take a little bit of the yellow. I don't want to bring too much yellow in because this is quite a bright yellow. Something like the light yellow ochre or that Naples yellow would be a little bit better. But I'm going to carry on with this because this is what I've been using. I'm just going to bring a little bit of that yellow into this wing to just bring a touch of the yellow colour through. There we go. That'll do. If I need to, this is the burnt ochre, and you can just top up any little bits that need to be topped up with a glaze. I'm getting to the end now. I'm just going to take a white pencil in a minute and just add a little bit of white over this wing, just to make it look a little bit more transparent, just to smooth out the wing a little bit. And you don't have to do this bit now if you don't want to. I'm going to do it in a second. I'm pretty much there with this. I'm going to leave that like that, I think. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my white pencil. So all I'm going to do now is take my white pencil and just pull the white pencil over these lighter bits. Just add to that feel of the texture and the look of the wing. I'm going to just bring a little bit around here as well. Just blend anywhere that, you know, might need a blend using this white pencil. I don't want to put too much white down, but I will just soften out anything that perhaps needs to be softened out. I'll soften that little bit on that side there, just pulling that over there. I can't really see anything else around here. I could probably just soften this out a little bit. It's just pulling it, isn't it? Can you see it's just picking it up and just pulling it out a little bit, pulling the darker pencil out and just making it a bit more sort of fuzzy. Let's do the same on this side. Let's bring this around. There's really not much that I need to do. Just picking up, softening. Oh, I will do this little bit around here. Soften that. This bit isn't essential. It really isn't essential. All I'm doing is just softening areas, but you know, it was fine as it was. So if you don't have a white pencil, like I say, you could do it with the polychromos. I find the Pablo and the Luminance pencils, they're really quite sort of opaque, so they give a really nice coverage. But that's it. I've just realised I need to bring a little bit down here. So that's it. Once you've put the white pencil down, actually, you can just go over again and add an extra glaze. You can put that on top of that white pencil. And that can also give you some really nice textures because, again, you've made the paper quite sort of quite smooth with the white pencil. So, but I think I'm going to leave that there. I think I've got everything in there that's going to make it look like a little bee. So I will. I'm going to leave that there. I really hope that you have enjoyed drawing this little bee with me. If you have, then do give it a like. Remember to subscribe if you want to see more tutorials like this. And also YouTube has a new feature now where you can hype the video, or you can hype the tutorial or the project as well. There's a little button underneath the video that says hype. It doesn't cost you anything, but it's really helpful to me because it lets YouTube know that you have enjoyed this video, and then YouTube think other people might enjoy it and they'll show it to other people, and that's obviously really helpful to small channels like me. So if you have enjoyed the video, then you know, don't forget to give it a like. That would be really useful. Hype, that would be useful, and of course subscribe so that you get to see more tutorials like this. If you've enjoyed this project and you want more tutorials, you'll find lots of tutorials where we draw birds, animals, more sort of insects and nature over on my Patreon channel, and I'll leave a link to that in the description as well. If you draw your little bee, I'd love to see the drawings. You can put him in the community. I've got the community tab here on YouTube, so you can do that, or if you put him on Instagram, then yeah, you can tag me, and I'd love to see that as well. So I'm going to leave that there for now. I think that is probably enough. I'm just sort of fiddling with it now whilst I'm talking, but I'll leave that there for now, and I look forward to seeing you again soon in the next video with another project. Bye for now.